I think when we can return home to ourselves and learn to love ourselves, like really, I'm not just talking like self-love. I am talking trust and love and knowing who you are and accepting who you are, all the bits and bobs and, jangy pieces. There is so much more to living when you can come from that place and take the pressure off of it being a destination or a perfection or a fixing. It's a much gentler journey.
Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast, your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew. As you're listening to this, we have officially wrapped up our Restmas journey together. Thank you so much to each of you who joined me on that journey, who dropped into the New Moon Rest Circle with me, and who celebrated the winter solstice in ceremony and sisterhood. If you've been following along on that journey, you'll know that the doors to the Wise Wild Woman Mentorship are open. And from now through February 1st, if you join us, you'll not only receive the founder's rate for an entire year of journeying through the seasons together, exploring in sisterhood, creating the ripple of change that we hope to see in the world. You'll also receive a bonus month and a bit. I am gifting anyone who decides to hop in between now and February all of the time up until February 1st as additional time in the mentorship, as well as a remote healing session with me. These powerful energy healings combined with voice note support are valued at $250. So if you have questions, if you're feeling the call to journey through 2026 in a different way, I invite you with my whole heart to reach out, to connect with me, to connect with any of the other women inside the mentorship, and to explore the possibility of journeying with us through the next calendar year. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I am here today with a guest who I'm so excited to have on the show. Jenn Forgie is a multi-passionate creator and soul guide who supports women to find their way back home to their true selves for meaningful connection to themselves and their lives. Through her in-person retreats, intimate group journeys, and one-on-one mentoring, Jenn blends expressive, slow writing, storytelling, somatic awareness, and lived experience to help others reconnect with their inner truth, self-compassion, and creative power for whole well-being and living. She's also an interdisciplinary artist, having recently completed her first play, 7 Pieces, which explores generational trauma, healing, and reintegration to one's self and body. Jenn is also a trained end-of-life doula and continues her studies in Tellington T-Touch. Oh my gosh, I didn't know we were going to have conversations about that. Supporting both humans and animals through life's transitions. Jenn's decade-long healing and creative path inform everything she teaches, offering a rare blend of artistry, grounded wisdom, and soul-level guidance for those ready to return to themselves with kindness, love, and compassion. She's also a dear friend, as you might have guessed by my exclamation just then. Welcome to the show, Jenn.
Thank you so much. Wow. Who is that you just read about? That's quite something to hear that back to yourself.
Yeah, I love the way that lands. I experience it the same way too. When I'm reading my bio, I'm like, oh yeah, I sound great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also I was like, yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Hey.
all true. It's all true. Um, and I'm so excited to be able to dive into all these multifaceted things that you bring to the world. There's so much magic there. The reason I exclaimed about the T-touch is my mom has been a T-touch practitioner since I was like an infant.
I know your mom. I might
So
know.
you might know my mom, Sue Faulkner March is her name.
I think I do know her name. I don't know her personally, but in the community
Mhm.
touch, I need to connect with her.
Yeah. Yeah, she also teaches centered writing. She teaches all around the world at this point. She's a teacher of the teachers.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Is she equine, primarily equine T-touch? Oh,
primarily, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
companion animals.
Right, yeah, and I mean, she does humans and any this is a whole sidetrack. Come with us on this journey, listeners. If you don't know what T-touch is, send me a message or send Jen a message, and we'll happily talk to you about this therapeutic touch. It's magic. It really is.
Oh,
So, as I mentioned before we jumped on to record, where I like to start these conversations is with a question about your own connection to your spirituality and the way that it is maybe evolved or changed or developed over your life and how it informs the work that you do today.
oh my goodness, that's such a giant question.
It's huge. It's juicy. Just dig into whatever parts feel good.
When you use the word evolved, I think, boy, has it ever. I was raised in a fairly strict Catholic home, and I can, upon reflection as a child, I could never connect to this God that I was raised with was very punishing and scary, and was someone I begged and I promised, I'll be a good girl. I'll be a good girl if you'll just do this. So there's this whole bizarre kind of like hierarchical, othering, patriarchal, scary God. And if I just like was a good girl, then everything would be okay. But that actually wasn't how all worked out. And so, I grew up, and I've always had a very strong connection to nature and animals. And over my years of my own healing journey, I have been also in parallel or simultaneously developing my relationship with spirit. And that's even more of my journey now, is my
Mm,
connecting to spirituality. As I've shared before, my grandmother was Irish, my grandfather was Scottish, but I don't know anything or have a connection because we were raised, you just don't. It was cut off. So it wasn't like revered or respected. So that spirituality is lost as well. On my mom's side is we're French and Métis, and that also the Métis part was hidden. So there are connections with land and animals that I feel naturally. And so now I'm in this place in my life where I'm kind of pulling in, I'm trying to learn about my Celtic ancestry. I have materials. I'm also and have been on a journey embracing, what is this Métis? What does this mean? And really in a place of my life where I'm integrating a lot of different elements, but all comes back to connection with myself and my higher self, and this belief and knowing and practice of unwavering trust that I'm guided, that I'm protected. And so my spiritual practice is very much with the earth and my ancestors and this source, universe, God.
mhm,
So it is evolving
mhm.
more grounded and more real and accessible to me now than it ever has been. Like I really feel my spiritual and my work, my spiritual connection does come through my work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense to me, just knowing a little bit about what you do and what you offer and the
Mm.
journey you've been on. I think it's a really common kind of storyline from so many of the women I speak to that they came from really strict some version of Christianity, so Catholicism, whatever branch it is,
Mm-hmm.
with that very removed from earth
Mm-hmm.
father figure who was a punishing God. And
Yeah.
yeah, you'd better behave or else. And there's so often that line of sensing that that can't be it, that there's got to be something more
Mm-hmm.
connected, more nourishing,
Mm-hmm.
more natural, more gentle. I know I've read a few books. One specifically is jumping out at me. It's called The Flowering Wand by Sophie Strand, and she talks about how the way that Christianity evolved, it severed Jesus and God the Father from the earth and put them way up in the sky where we can't get to them. And every other religion is land-based, whether or not it's like nature-based religion. Those deities walked the earth. They were here. They were of the earth. We could
Yeah.
viscerally connect with them. And so we lost something
Mm.
when we like severed that connection to the earth and her body in our worship.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because like even I can remember, when I was a kid and it was thunderstorms and I was afraid of thunder, and my mom would say it was God moving his furniture, that God is a he, this omnipotent power that's always watching you. Also, Santa Claus is similar to that, always watching.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a dinner last night and the conversation was about how, remember the game Telephone Line, where you
Yeah.
like what's the secret around? So I can't remember which testament, the old or the new, was written. Like, I think it's the new, was written 200 years after Jesus. And and so you have to remember these are stories that were shared by word of mouth. And I brought up the idea, well, and also broken telephone, through time, these stories are changed. But also our conversation was about how a lot of religions have lost, like we've lost the connection to what Jesus represented,
Mm-hmm.
because through time the agendas came in. So it
Mm-hmm.
came about defining the religion and the leaders based on a certain agenda and a rightness.
Yeah.
And now, and including like what I know, a sense of your spirituality and the spiritual journey I'm on is so not about rightness. It's about partnership, and it's about, there's a softness. It's not a hierarchical, there's no system of right, wrong, better. There's just like
Mm-hmm.
softening into, and a trusting, and an allowing, and even allowing ourselves to nurture the belief and that we aren't alone, and that we're not just a physical body.
Yeah. Yeah. It's completely that. And that reciprocity, that's the word that keeps coming to mind too, is such a big piece of the way that my spirituality plays out and I've learned. And speaking of that, I love that you brought up when the New Testament was written down. It was also, as you said, it was a political drive to
Yeah.
stamp out what was still burgeoning of the goddess worship and culture. And that's why we get these really slanderous turns of phrase around, temple prostitutes. They weren't. They were priestesses. They were incredibly powerful and empowered women in the society. And the new religion of Christianity was fighting tooth and nail to stamp out all those old practices and beliefs in order to wrest control of this area of the world. And it's really fascinating.
Agenda.
And yeah, anyone who's interested in diving deep on that, the book When God Was a Woman is awesome. It's dry. It's like I was really thankful for my archaeology training when I was reading it, because the first half is very much reads a bit like an archaeology paper, but it is really interesting and fascinating about all of that. And yeah, I love how many of us, especially, it feels like there is this really big movement right now. I know my own algorithm makes me feel like everybody in the world is waking up to the fact that we are part of nature, and that
Yeah.
the honoring the cycles and the seasons and being in reciprocity with the land is something that all people did, all
Hmm.
of them, for most of human history. And there is this real pull from especially those of us in the West, especially those of us in North America, who've been really, again, severed from our own practices, our wisdom systems, our traditional knowings, our culture. In the wave of colonialism, not only did we cause harm, great harm, in the places we colonized, but there's harm that's being passed down for those of us now living on this stolen land who don't have any connection back to the ways of meaning making that our ancestors had for so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking of that word severed and how we are severed from the land and creating time to connect inward because of grind culture, hustle
Mm-hmm.
culture. And so, what? There's no room for that slowing down. I'm not saying there isn't, I'm saying that's the belief, is like the
Yes.
story gets told because through time, that connection has been severed at the expense of certain patriarchal agendas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then capitalism compounding those agendas, and that it's easier to, it comes up over and over for me that it's so much easier to extract from the land if you don't recognize your intimate connection to it. It becomes a resource instead of a partner or another living breathing being that we're sharing space with.
It's
Yeah.
it's like a dissociation, which is interesting because in my play, Seven Pieces, there's a poem that one of the characters says, and it speaks of how this is her first land, her body.
Mm.
Story of
Mhm.
a woman who is separated, severed, dissociated from her body because of abuse. And so her body is in seven pieces. And so it's
Mm.
the story of their reconciliation and their coming back together. But that happens because of dissociation. So just like when you're talking about, the taking from the land, some part of you has to be dissociated to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the same as like how we separate from our own selves. There's a dissociation that happens. And I don't think that's bad or good. It's just part of what we do in order to survive.
Survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the sad state of so many of our lives is that in order to survive, in order to quote unquote make it and live in this culture that we find ourselves in, we do have to dissociate, because otherwise the overwhelm would be too much. The pain of
Yeah.
witnessing what's going on in the world would just be too much. And so, even for those of us walking this path of coming home to
Mm.
ourselves, to the earth, to these practices, creating new spiritual practices where we don't have any links to old ones, reviving old spiritual practices from our lineage,
Mm.
there is still some part of dissociation. I was actually speaking to a woman inside my mentorship this morning who asked me, like, how do we hold the light in the face of so much darkness? With the things that have happened in the last week, if anyone listens to the news, which I try not to listen too much, and how do we be responsible citizens and be engaged while maintaining some sense of sanity? And at some point, we do have to kind of decide that we can recognize and acknowledge the pain out there, but not take it on. And that's a little bit of dissociation for many of us.
It's almost like, yeah, compartmentalizing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that when I think of dissociation, I think of it as a survival mechanism. But then when I think of like dissociation by choice, like by
Mm-hmm.
conscious choice, it adds like an element of healthy. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
when you're a kid or you're in a war zone or whatever the ways that you dissociate because you need to survive, but it becomes a survival mechanism that no longer works if it makes you
Right.
sort of, it affects your interpersonal relationships. But when we can dissociate, compartmentalize, create boundaries in a conscious way, I think that's really healthy and necessary.
Yeah.
I don't think our nervous systems are designed to handle constant we know, you know this, we know
Yeah.
not. And that's just like almost a no-brainer. We're not
Mhm.
designed to handle an influx of stimulation and negativity and
Mhm.
abuse. We're just not.
No, no, and yeah, I think the thing that gets me is that I almost get angry that I have to. I have to cause that part. Like, I want to be able to show up and feel, and you're right. In a small culture without the World Wide Web and the ways that we get to see what's happening literally on the other side of the globe, if I lived 100, 200 years ago, I wouldn't get much news outside of my town, except for occasionally when news made its way in. And so there would be tragedy, of course, but it would be small enough to hold, and you'd hold it together.
Oh gosh. Yeah, you wouldn't have the constant inflow of bad news after bad news after bad news after bad news. You get, I don't know, the donkey comes in and delivers the news by the messenger, and you are hit with it. But I would agree, like, I'm imagining we had a capacity to deal with the darkness that is necessarily going to be a part of living without taxing our systems.
Quite so heavily. It's interesting too because we know that, for instance, crime rates have been steadily decreasing since I think like the 80s or 90s. And yet, the amount of news coverage that we get bombarded with has been increasing exponentially. And so it makes us feel as though the
Yeah.
world is worse than it is. I'm not to discredit that there's some really shit things happening out there right now,
Mhm.
but there is this sense of heightened fear and anxiety and unwellness because of the way that our media focuses on the negative, because that's what gets clicks.
That's what gets clicks. I mean, I was even saying at this dinner last night, the Variety magazine and several other HBO or some other channels are backlashing on what's his name said about Rob Reiner's death.
Mhm.
And I said, well, the really sick thing is he's going to love that. He's going to love
Mhm.
all that attention. And so
Mhm.
I just think of that question your person in your groups asked about, how do we be the light? Well, I think it's an invitation for our creativity. Like
Mhm.
I don't personally believe in toxic positivity.
No. No, we are not for toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing here.
Yeah, we are not spiritually bypassing. There is darkness, and it's like, can we hold space for both without tipping into that overwhelm? And I think there are a lot of there's a movement towards that, and I think that
Mhm.
the question, how do we also hold the light, is not a here's how question. It's a well, here's what I do, and here's what helps for
Mhm.
me, and here's what we are experimenting. It's like an experimentation. It's like a practice ground of like what works, what doesn't work. And I think it's
Mhm.
an evolutionary thing. How
Mhm.
do we be the light without being,
Mhm.
positive Pollyanna?
Mhm.
Who's
Yeah.
just I remember I had a friend whose mom would always say, "It is what it is." And something I couldn't, like, my brain didn't catch up, but something viscerally would be so pissed off. It is what
Mhm.
it is. Oh, well, it is what it is. It is what, and every time I heard it, like, it was like my spine went, and then I
Yeah.
realized, oh, this is a way to stay safe
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
disengage.
Mhm. Yeah, and resigned. In that's it feels so powerless to say it is what it is,
Completely
in
power.
that sense. It is empowering to say, "Okay, this is how it is,
Yeah.
and how can I change? how can I change? How can I make a change? What difference? What is my role to play here? But there is that sense of like, well, that's just the world is shit and it's shitty, and if we keep focusing on it. I'm reading Ask It It Is Given right now, and they were
Oh
one
yeah.
of the yeah, for the first time actually. I'd listened to lots of Abraham Hicks in the past, but I'd never read it, and I'm finding it so helpful. And I definitely find that it can border on spiritual bypassing to some extent, depending how you're reading it. And so I try to stay really grounded in some of my own values and beliefs. And there's a lot of wisdom in there. And
Yeah.
I was reading last night about, if you are visiting a town that's super adorable and it's got all the cutest shops and the people are all really friendly, and you're focusing on all of these things, and everyone's like, "Oh, have you tried the bakery yet?" You're going to have a great time. But if you are in that same town and every single person you meet's like, watch out for that pothole on 6th Ave. Like, it's massive. It eats people. Obviously, it's not quite that dramatic in there, but like everybody and the whole focus is this big pothole that for some reason the city won't fix. And it's been terrible. And somebody fell in last week and hurt themselves. And like, that's going to be your experience, is that focus on the bad and the negative.
Totally.
Doesn't mean you can't walk past the pothole and go, huh, there's a pothole there. Okay, I'm acknowledging it. I'm not disregarding it, but there's so much that truth of being able to say, yes, that whatever it is, it's awful. And
Mm.
what's my responsibility, or how can I be that light for those around me in those cases or in those situations, especially the ones that I can't directly impact.
Well, you just reminding me of Pema Chodron and her. I don't have all the, like the Bodhisattva, I don't have all the language down, but from her, I remember learning there's also this space of you see the news, you give some space to feel what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's anger or if that's disgust or pain, you just don't stay there.
Mm-hmm.
From there, you take care of your nervous system, whether that means, like for me, I mean, I just talking about the Rob Reiner thing, I can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm aware I have some pretty strong emotions around that. And this is what I do. I give a bit of space for the illogical, the irrational, the reactive.
Mm-hmm.
I give some space for that, because otherwise, where does that go? That energy, that
Yes.
fury. How could he? What an idiot. How could we? Like, I have to give that. And then I have to calm, and I have to step away from that. That's
Mm-hmm.
the next point, is like the step away and then remember my light. Okay,
Yes.
what can I do? I can breathe into my heart center. I can focus on all the joy that Rob Reiner and his wife and their work brought to the world. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like incredible artist. So that's another way that I've learned in my journey to not shut down on what I feel angry or hurt or what I can't comprehend, but then to move to, what can I do? What can
Yeah.
what can I focus on?
Yeah.
Just so it's a little bit like, yeah, there's a giant pothole. Oh my gosh, that looks really scary. Whoo, I see it. It's there. How can I get past this on this street? Okay. Wow, that's really deep. Ooh, that would be so scary to fall into that. Okay, I'm going to go around and I'm going to continue on. But I didn't
Mm-hmm.
pothole,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if that
Yeah, I
makes
think it makes so
sense.
much sense. Yeah. There's so much wisdom in what you're sharing, and I think it's the piece that so many people don't know how to do because we've never been taught. And I think that's why your work and people like us who are trying to share what we've learned,
Yeah.
it's so important, because emotional regulation is not something our parents' generation even knew the words for, let alone how to impart it to us. And so that it's so important what you named there. Give yourself space to feel it, to cry, to rage, to scream, to have that visceral reaction to some of the truly not like horrible things or scary things or overwhelming or heartbreaking things, denying that really human emotional reaction is not helpful.
It's
But
harmful.
it's harmful, exactly, because it still exists, it just gets stored. And also harmful is allowing ourselves to fall into that without an exit strategy. And that's when we get
Yeah.
spiraling into it, and then everything becomes negative and our focus stays there. And so then we see more and more and more of the negative because that's what we're focusing on. Anyone who's ever bought a new car will know how the reticular activating system works. You buy a car and all of a sudden you see your car freaking everywhere. You're like, this many people didn't own my car before today, did they? And the same thing is, if we're focusing on those things we're upset about without having tools
Oh,
to
yeah.
bring ourselves home to our bodies and start to connect,
Their
that's
mind.
where we get in harm in our minds. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's like anything that you put on repeat. I just had
Mm-hmm.
a conversation with a friend about internalized racism and catching when things come up and having integrity to catch it
Mm-hmm.
and then be aware. And then it's the same with the negative focus. Like, can you be aware? This is like the first part of what I do with every client I work with is like, we're just going to focus on paying attention so that you know how you're thinking, how you're feeling, getting the connection, so that that practice of awareness is where your kind of point of power is to make shifts in your way. Like let's just take the world is shit, the world is dark, oh my god, there's war, there's this, we have that guy, we have, there's so much abuse, there's so much, like I could just go on and on every day, over and over and over. Well, how am I going to feel? Because we know
Mm-hmm.
science has proven that emotions are connected to our thoughts. One of my favorite books, and oh my goodness, if I can't, Candace Pert. I think it's Candace Pert, Molecules of Emotion. This was like revolutionary. I think she was a neuroscientist, but she could prove that emotions were held in our cells, and like all the science world was like, no. It's an excellent book. She wrote
Mm-hmm.
it decades ago. So if the same mechanism that, if I just repeat this over and over, and then, like right now it's pouring rain. Ugh, Vancouver's so rainy, rainy, rainy. Oh yeah, and I could do that, or I could say, well, we're in a
Look
rainforest.
how green it is.
Greenery around, like there's so much life and there's so much gorgeous trees which are giving us so much oxygen. It's just, is it a choice? Yes, but the real choice is about what are you going to practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you can focus on the world as being shit, or you can focus on, this is the light part, right? Like, where's the
Mm-hmm.
look for the good, look for it, look for the helpers. Who said that? Was it Rumi?
Oh, it
Who
might have been.
look for the helpers? So what I think we're talking about is like not to ignore what hurts and what makes you angry, but just don't stay there. It's both and.
Mr. Rogers.
It
Sorry.
was Mr. Rogers. Oh, how could
Yeah.
Rumi? That doesn't even sound like Rumi.
Yeah, it was Mr. Rogers advising people, especially children, to find comfort and hope during scary times by focusing on those who offer help. And it's so true. It's not their toxic positivity where we're not denying the bad. We're not we're not pretending it's not there, but acknowledging it and choosing not to let our focus stay there, because especially for anyone who feels passionately about helping and creating a better world, if we're constantly focused on that negative part, we are constantly depleted because our nervous systems are in a constant state of fight or flight, anxiety, high cortisol. We end up sick more often. We are have less like brain processing power. Our prefrontal
Gut,
cortex doesn't work as well. Gut
brain.
issue, like everything, right? We don't function. And so we are much less capable of enacting change if we're always hyper fixated in that state of like everything is hard and wrong and bad and oh my gosh, how like this is also terrible, how do we change it? It doesn't serve anyone. And so I
So,
think,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
you go.
Oh, I was going to say, so I think, something like your coming home offering and journey to be able to learn how to reconnect with ourselves and our bodies and nourish ourselves, especially as women. I think so many of us struggle with feeling selfish if we're going to take time to slow down, to tend to ourselves. It feels wrong and bad, like we're not being the good girl that we were scared into being. And I think it takes time and practice to get to that point where you recognize, oh, actually, I am serving others most deeply by serving myself first.
It is selfish. It's necessarily selfish. The problem is that that word has a negative connotation.
Yes.
It's selfish work. It's necessary to turn inward to do the who am I? And to break the cycles of what we've been taught, which is everyone else but me.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I would say in terms of like allowing that life is presented, like life is not a walk in a rainbow filled. We don't get rainbows without rain, and we don't get rain
Mm-hmm.
with dark clouds. Like it's not that. It's not puppies and pretty. It's not the Wizard of Oz. It's not the Oz, she says as she drinks her neon green wicked. It's just the bottle's green. So, like how you move to the light, or how you choose to go inward and know yourself, or how you choose to care for yourself differently. I think one of the most important things is to figure out why it matters to you before you say, oh, yeah, I got to go to the gym. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it matter to you? You know, I have a client that I'm working with who had this incredible image. She said, I'm on a pond and I'm under the ice and it's frozen and I'm just moving along the ice and I want to get out, but I'm also really comfortable under here.
Mm-hmm.
Love an image.
Mm-hmm.
So the work is, why do you want to get out? What matters more? So to come home to ourselves, like for me in my personal journey, to choose to heal, to choose to do the things that are for us, whatever that might be. If you want to take meditation, or you want to be a journaler, or you want to start a podcast, or I mean, even the work that you and I do, like we have to know why something matters to us, because that will move you towards the thing more than motivation. You cannot rely on motivation.
Mm-hmm.
You have to rely on your why. Why did I choose this? Why does this matter to me? So if you want to be focusing more on the light, you have to be willing to give up the practice of focusing on how shitty the world is, but it will be sustainable because you will have figured out, why does this matter to me?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah. It triggered something as you were saying that like, even those things that we want to change because we don't like the way they feel, they're still difficult to change, in part because it's a neural pathway that's been worn down over and over and over, and in part because it's part of our identity.
Yeah.
And the ego holds on to our identity with a death grip, even if we hate that part of ourselves, or we really dislike
Yeah.
the pattern or the behavior or the belief. It's still going to be work to let go. And that's where that, as you said, that why, what is that driving why? That's what helps us when we fall back into the ruts of our old patterns, beliefs, behaviors, when we sink back under the ice because, like, oh shit, it's cold under here and I can't breathe, but at least it's familiar.
It's familiar. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
just made me think of somebody I know who had a heart attack. This is many years ago, and that you hear about this. People have heart attacks. It changes their lives. They change.
Mm-hmm.
They eat. They stop smoking. They do whatever the things. Not everybody does, but the people who do that, and it's because it scared them,
Mm-hmm.
something mattered more to them, and they realized I want
Yeah.
to live. There's, you hear about that from people who have near death experiences, like, oh, there's so much more I'm here for, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so how do those of us who do this work help people to see we want to start the return to self-care and knowing and being well before the heart attack,
Yeah.
before the near death experience. We want to know why something matters, or that we matter in this life that we have before the crisis.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
We live in a
exactly.
culture that's like, have the crisis first. Push, 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 and
Yeah.
have your crisis and then change your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because we have so many of these stories, and yet it's still the hardest thing to do,
It's
even
hard.
though we have lots of people, lots of people saying, and it is often that near death experience that changes things for
Yeah.
people and really pulls into focus what really matters. And we can read that and be like, yeah, that's true. And then, the mortgage bill comes in and the electricity bill comes in and we're hustling at work and we're pushing to make enough money to survive. And it's a fascinating topic that we could carry on talking about for hours, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
Bottom line, any changes that you're making or any shifts, even if it's just in how you think about yourself, why does it matter? Every time I
mhm,
lead a journaling workshop or my retreat that I do in May, I start with why does this matter? Why am I here? Why did I choose this? Like,
mhm,
why am I on this podcast? Because I love your work. I love what you bring to the world, and I want to be in conversation with you, and I want to have these kind of conversations because that's where I am in my life right now, and that's part of being a light worker.
mhm, mhm.
Having
Yeah.
these rich conversations that are not about, if you do A plus B, you'll get C, but are actually about the world is complex, and these things are hard, and there's also light and there's dark, and there's a lot of like amazing magical stuff that we can pull from our ancestors, from our life experience, from, yeah, we could do 15 podcast episodes.
We could. We really could. But as this podcast episode is nearing its end point from a time perspective, I want to make sure that we get to hear explicitly about this coming home journey that you are bringing into the world. I know it begins January 14th. I
Mhm.
know that it's, oh my gosh, I should know. It's 8 week or 3 month.
3 months.
3 months. I thought it was 3 months, and then I was like,
Oh,
do I remember right? I'm part of it. I
you
should
are.
know.
So, yeah. So I
Yeah.
created Coming Home. I'm on and have been for many years on a journey of returning home. I come from running from my home. I lived a lot of my life running from my body, running from myself, which showed up in, its rejection, its harmful thoughts. I had bulimia for a number of years, which I don't have anymore, or I wouldn't be having this conversation.
Mhm.
And so it's like all the ways that we run from ourselves. And so there is, in the women that I work with and on my own journey, I really recognized around the mid 40s that there was this feeling of like a big shift of recognizing something's off inside. I hear words like I feel lost from myself, or I feel like disconnected. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be crisis disconnection. It can be just a little bit where you get those little niggly feelings of like, yeah, I want to write that book, but there's no time, and I have the job, and I have the this, and I have that. So out of many observations, I decided to create a container of time where we gather called Coming Home. And it's a women's journey. It's a women's circle where we will have this like 3 month, we'll meet live once a week, and there will be soulful and practical exercises and play and tools. So we'll be in the experience of exploring and discovering what does coming home, and then what is home, what do those mean to me, the individual. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like coming home and I'll tell you what it means. No, you're going to discover what that means, because it's so personal and it's so important to have agency over using your voice to say, this is what feels like home for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then to discover, like, why do I want to be home? Am I home? Have I been running from myself? So a lot of exploration. And then you are one of my guest facilitators, which I just think is so, oh, it's so aligned. And then Meg Aris is going to, am I pronouncing her last name right? Aris?
Eris, yeah.
Aris is going to be bringing her somatic and wisdom around body. It's because
Mm-hmm.
the coming home is not just about, I need to change my thoughts and be happier. It's body, mind, soul. We're working with a holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you'll be at home by the time 3 months is over, because this is a life journey.
Mm-hmm.
Home changes. Just like, how many times do you move your furniture around in your own house? How many times do you purge stuff that's in the attic that you no longer need? Like, it's a renovation, it's a purging, and it's a life journey. So and it's experiential, but I'm very excited about it because it's different than the other journeys that I've offered, and I think it's going to be really incredible. It's very small number of seats
Yeah.
for that reason, so that it is intimate. And then we'll have like a community WhatsApp, and you and Meg will be bringing your magic. And I have a feeling it's going to turn into something pretty transformational in a safe and beautiful way. And I can say that at the end of it, if the participants participate, which they will, because I'm being picky about who comes in, and they get
Mm-hmm.
ready for the journey, they will feel closer to home, but they will also be really clear about what it means to them and
Yeah.
why it
Oh,
matters. Sorry, that's a
beautiful.
big, long.
That's okay. That's what I wanted. I wanted listeners to be able to have a really good understanding of what this journey is and if it's calling to them. All the links are going to be below in the show notes. There's a beautiful landing page with more information, kind of the more practical, like what to expect pieces as well. Some more information. If you're a longtime listener, you'll have heard me speak about Meg more than once on this show. She's Wise Moves with Meg, and I reference her quite often. And I'm so excited to be a guest speaker and facilitator in this program.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a really lovely connection that we've created here. So definitely go and check out the webpage, learn more about coming home. Go follow Jenn over on Instagram. Her handle is at Jenn Forgie, which is JENNFORGIE. And again, that link will be below in the show notes. Do you have any last message, words, any last bit of wisdom that you want to share with listeners before we wrap up?
I want to say, take the pressure off. You don't need, there's nothing to fix. There's nothing to get right. There's a journey. Like, if you knew me so long ago, I never would have believed I would be somebody who could say, yes, I love who I am, and I accept who I am, and I know how to take care of myself. I think when we can return home to ourselves and learn to love ourselves, like, really, I'm not just talking like self-love. I am talking trust and love and knowing who you are and accepting who you are, all the bits and bobs and, jangy pieces. There is so much more to living when you can come from that place and take the pressure off of it being a destination or a perfection or a fixing. It's a much gentler journey.
Beautiful. I love that message to leave everyone with. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and being my guest. It's been a delight to have this conversation.
For me too. Thank you so much.
And to everybody listening, as I said, please reach out, connect with Jenn. And if you like this episode, as always, leave a rating, a review, like, subscribe if you're on YouTube, and of course, share it with a friend. I'll be back again, same time next week. Bye for now.